it's just me right now. A couple of people have called in sick, a couple people are away from their desks, and a couple of people are out of country. So, let's start off with just a couple of, little recaps with respect to some of the fights that we'll be watching here on Talkin' Fight. Efe Ajagba is gonna defend his WBC silver title against Joe Goodall. That's coming up, tomorrow night. Coming to us live from the Tahoe Blue Event Center in Lake Tahoe, Nevada.
Can you hear me?
Oh, hey there, Lou. Hang on one second. Lou's joining me. 1 second. There he is. Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Lou.
Hi, how you doing? Boy, was I wrong about last week.
Yes,
Catastrophically wrong.
yes, yes, you picked the Buster Douglas of all fights on that one.
Mhm. That's
Yeah,
a compliment. I was much more wrong than that. Yeah.
well, Nagano was really, fit and ready, and I think, Tyson Fury was not ready, simply.
Right.
Um,
I scored it. I scored it for Fury by 1 point, but that in essence is a loss. I mean, he got manhandled by this guy, and uh, the knockdown was legitimate, but his balance was off. But that's his fault,
right.
you
Yeah,
know. And this garbage that we've been hearing that he's a great technical boxer like Ali, he squares up against everyone,
right,
you know.
right. Yeah,
So he just squared up against the guy who he couldn't hurt, and the guy was a southpaw. He didn't know what to do, and I laughed all week when people said, "But don't worry, he'll easily beat Usyk." And I thought, "Are you kidding?
no.
Usyk will take him 12-round unanimous decision, and Fury." Frank Warren's already delayed the fight from
That's right.
December to February.
That's
And
right.
when I spoke with Russ Amber, Russ said, "We're not counting on anything." In other words, I don't think that fight's going to even happen. You know,
Wow.
why fight bums like Derek Chisora and Dillian White all the
Right.
time after you've beaten them a couple times? It's a joke.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So what do you think then about our friend Eddie Hearn saying, his boy Joshua is gonna get in the ring with Ngannou next? What do you think about that?
I don't think that's a smart move, because Usyk's a southpaw and Joshua couldn't land a punch, and Nagano can hit, and a loss to Nagano would be catastrophic to Joshua. If he's going to lose, fight Deontay Wilder and get incredible money rather than Nagano.
Yeah, so we will see what happens next.
But Eddie Hearn's talking about Henry Cooper fighting Nagano, and Cooper's been dead for 11 years. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Anything to get in the headlines, eh? All
Yeah.
right. So I just opened up the show not knowing if anyone was joining me with the Effiga Ajagba fight tomorrow night against Joe Gordina, I believe.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Effie's for a while. Yeah, I think he's coming off a loss. Let's have a quick look here. Back in club, entered the ring as a 15-0 knockout artist.
Frank
18
Sanchez beat him,
oh, okay, so yeah, so
but he stood the distance. I mean, he still went the distance. Was it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it Jagba the guy that one fighter went in and walked out when he saw him?
that's a good one. That's a good memory, but I can't remember. Uh,
I don't blame the guy for doing that. I mean, you look at a guy like that and you just think, nah, I'd rather live.
he's 6'6". Yeah, he's 18-1. Yeah, 13 knockouts, ranked number 7 WBC.
Of
It
all
doesn't mention anything about anyone walking out on him,
if all the big, I'm just finishing an article on my Once Upon a Time in the Prize Ring on
right?
Substack, and I've gone over about 15 fighters going back to 1700s that fought that were outsized, and their height. There was one guy from Bucharest who was 8 feet 2 inches
What?
and died at 26 of tuberculosis. Gogu Mitu, and I think he had like a 3-0 record or 2-0 record, and fights were fixed. But there's guys that have been 7'6", 7'7", and their height just never reaches their ability. And the only one, was Valuev, but even then, he wasn't a skilled fighter. And there was a guy, my friend Tony G, a historian in Britain, told me. Uh, uh, he just told me a couple days ago. I apologize, can't remember the name, but the guy I think was 6'9", and actually was successful in the ring. But that's very rare. Remember David Price, the British guy who was
Yes.
6'9" and no balance, just no balance. And he asked Lennox for advice, and Lennox said, "Sure, don't take your family to training camp. I'm happy when they're around." Yeah, the idea in training camp is not to be happy.
Some of the guys should be comedians, though.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, Carnera fights were fixed, and Jess Willard couldn't fight, and just all these guys that there's so many of them. 7'2", 7'4". There is one guy from the NBA who was 7'2" and a half, and had 6 fights, 3 wins, 3 losses, all by knockout, but convicted of rape for the 3rd time and still in prison. So a lot of these guys, remember I had Too Tall Jones, a lot of them came from basketball and thought, well, I'm overwhelmingly tall, so that'll help me. But not if you don't know what to do with it.
Well, I believe, not that this matters to either one of us, but didn't Jake Paul, wasn't his first fight against Nate Robinson, the NBA player?
Yeah.
So anyway, that would be digressing if we talked about that.
Yeah.
Let's see. No, I thought Tim might be trying to contact us. No.
But some of these guys, I mean, you look at a guy in the 40s like Abe Simon, who was 6'6", and suffered from gigantism, and beat Jersey Joe Walcott, but got butchered by Joe Louis. And then he fought another guy who was 6'6", Buddy Bear, Max Baird's brother. But Buddy Bear was 6'6" and could fight, and just annihilated him. But it's like Bob Fitzsimmons said, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of big guys just for I really I know about the background. I don't want to talk about the background, but I got to give Don King credit for at 92 years of age still putting on fights. Now these aren't exactly the blockbuster fights of days gone by, but he's got another one coming up, and it's got a couple of pretty good fighters on the card. Heavyweights, Trevor Bryan going up against Cassius Chaney. Badou Jack is in the ring against Makuba. So he's got a couple of good names. Adrian Broner, he's putting into the ring again against Chris Howard.
A shot fighter for a long time. No one else would take him.
Well, I think I think there might be some element of entertainment value here. I think
Absolutely.
I think Don King counting on. He's holding him down in Miami, if I'm not mistaken, in Florida. So I think it's good entertainment value to put on at that level a good quality night of boxing. Not the elite fighters, but a good quality night.
We rarely see the elite fighters. Here's what's incredible to me about Don King, and not to get into his background, like you said. If you look at his cards, Graham, in the 1870s, and from when my daughter says, that's when you were a young boy.
Right.
My daughter said to her teacher, "How do you know so much about Lincoln?" She said, "My father knew him." But if you look at his cards in the 1970s, these were stacked cards. So you'd have a world title fight. You'd have 7 or 8 world title fights, but on the undercard, you'd have Matthew Saad Muhammad, Eddie Gregory, Marvin Johnson, Mike Rossman. You'd have Hagler, Tony Simpson, Vito Antuofermo. These were just all elite level fighters fighting on the undercard.
Right.
And you got to see 9 or 10 fights great fights, and the prices were ridiculously small, and
Yep.
it was a better time for boxing.
And let me point out too, I can't remember the exact price, but his pay-per-view, and I can't even remember what the streamer is who's pulling this one off. But Don King is offering this fight, this card. I think it's $14.99.
Which is a
Now,
great price.
yeah, so that's a fair price for what's being offered for a night of boxing. If you just truly enjoy the sport and you'd rather pay that than $89.99 to see, an equal number of has-beens or up-and-comers and one potentially great fight, and because you don't really know,
Right, and
as we found out last week.
right, and it's funny because people always say, well, Don King came from the Cleveland mob. That's correct. But show me a promoter that doesn't have mob connections going back 300 years. Show me one. Tex Rickard, who promoted Dempsey, got the money to build Boyle's 30 acres in New Jersey from the mob, because some from another promoter, Mike Jacobs. But who else had the income back then to give you hundreds of thousands? Banks weren't going to do it. Corporations weren't. You had to go to the mob.
Digging a bit deeper on this one, when you say mob, do you mean
Mafia.
but an Italian fella who just happened to enjoy boxing and had some money to spend on it?
Frank Costello, Lucky Luciano, uh, Oni the Killer Madden, and Oni was partners with those guys, so he was untouchable. And it wasn't until Carpentier fought Dempsey for the first $1 million gate, because before that the money wasn't good enough. So Tommy Burns, when he fought Jack Johnson, he asked for 30 grand, which would be equivalent to today asking for 3 or 4 million. And he laughed because he said, no one's going to pay me 30 grand. But they asked him why he's charging that. Well, Johnson's the best fighter on earth. If I'm going to make that much of a risk, I should be paid the most. And he got the money. He wasn't expecting it, but the money, he was paid the money. But the mob, even at that time, thought, Johnson's getting 5 grand. For 35 grand, it's going to cost us more to send guys over to intimidate them. And then when they saw the $1 million gate, they thought, okay, money from radio, money from advertising, concessions, that's worth it. Now we're looking in the millions. And that's when the mob moved in. And all these fighters from then till now that people say, well, Kid Gavilan was a mob fighter. That's true. Liston was a mob fighter. That's true. But it wasn't their choice. James Toney, his trainer, Bill Miller, used to train and manage Johnny Saxton until Frankie Carbo, put a gun in his mouth and said, now he belongs to us.
Wow.
And you had no choice. So they decided when you won, but unfortunately, they also decided when you lost.
That reminds me of a story, and it's someone who we featured on Talkin Fight. He just lost his lawsuit against Eye of the Tiger over in Quebec, and you've mentioned these fellows before, and I wish I could remember the name of the fella. Let me just do a quick little Google search on this one.
French Canadian fighter?
No. He Eye of the Tiger wins. It's the first time I've heard of someone. Castillo Clayton, welterweight.
Yeah, good fighter.
Yeah. So I actually thought he was being represented by Eye of the Tiger, but apparently he had left their stable a few years ago and had been in court. Well, let me have a quick look here for how long they've been in court. They filed action against Clayton in 2021, so they've been in court for a couple of years. But anyway, Castillo lost that battle in court, with the court upholding the. Now, I have to wonder whether a boxer has the appropriate legal advice to, can they afford a lawyer to begin with in order to sign a management contract? So therefore, does he really know what he's signing? and that's always a decent legal defense, especially in the entertainment business. Um, but I was surprised to see that go through because you've often spoken as well about the mafia-controlled organizations in the boxing arena, if you will, in Montreal. So,
Well,
that's
what I'm talking about in Montreal was going back to the 50s and 60s. I don't know if the Tiger has that. I know they're tough negotiators, and I think to some extent they've supplanted Yvonne Michel. But the, I've never seen. I've only seen one or two instances from let's say 1927 till now where boxers sued a promoter and won, and even then had trouble collecting. Larry Holmes won, and against Don King, and a couple of other guys did, and got their money. It took them 20 years, but in when the famous Jack Dempsey Gene Tunney second fight, the Battle of the Long Count, uh, Gene Tunney didn't have the money to set up a training camp or run the promotion. His manager Billy Gibson also managed the lightweight champ Benny Leonard. So they went to Max Boo Boo Hoff in Philadelphia. And Hoff gave them upwards of $1 million to do everything, to pay for everything. After the fight, they stiffed Hoff. They said, we're not going to, why should we pay? Because, the fight had to be moved from New York to Philly, and you got a lot of money out of that. And I mean, just the stupidity of saying to a mobster who kills people for money, you don't have you're not entitled to the $1 million you gave me is
right.
ridiculous. And Hoff didn't do what most mobsters would do, which would be kill him. He went to the newspaper and he sued them in court. And when they asked him why, he said privately, I want the world to know that Gene Tunney is not squeaky clean. He got in bed with a mobster, and now he's welching on his money. And Tunney had one more fight, which he made almost nothing on. He was said to make $1 million, but who knows? And then he retired. The mob let him know, you're not welcome.
Huh.
We're not going to promote any more of your fights. His wife was an heiress, of American Steel, so she had hundreds of millions of dollars. But he was just essentially told, you're done. Even Dempsey said to him, it's not a wise thing to do that to these people. So, it's like in The Hustler with Jackie Gleason saying to Paul Newman about George C. Scott, you better pay him. and Dempsey, when fighters would come to him and say, what do I do? And he said, you got to pay him. And he said, why don't you do something? I'm one guy. Would you want me to stand up against the 5 families in New York? They'll kill me. Right. You're Jack Dempsey. They don't care.
Right.
And people disappeared. Eddie Machen, who was a heavyweight in the 60s, came out against the mob and spoke about things they'd done to him. And several years later, died mysteriously. Same with Zora Foley. Accidentally fell off his balcony into a swimming pool at a motel.
Wow.
These guys have long memories, and they don't make idle threats. They just don't. They used to meet at Jack Dempsey's restaurant.
Right.
Mob guys, and they planned fights, what they were going to do. And when the FBI picked up Dempsey, he said, I'd rather go to prison than squeal on them. They would kill me and my daughters and my wife.
Wow.
I'd rather be in prison. So, it's a terrifying prospect. I've never, I don't know enough of the background about Eye of the Tiger. I don't know if they are or not. But I personally have never had a problem with them when dealing with them. But they're an organization that's done well. Boxing's a tough business, and they don't back down. They put their money where their mouth is. So, in Canada, you're allowed to sue anyone you want. But I've seen fighters do that with Yvonne Michel, and other fighters do it with Eye of the Tiger. And it eventually ruined their careers, because regardless of how much they're taking, they're still known on the world stage. They can still get you a fight. And, 20 or 30% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Right. Right.
So Custio or anyone, I like Custio, can
Yep.
say, I own 100% of myself. That's great, but you'll never fight professionally again.
Right. Right. So that was interesting news. I was reporting on this week anyway. That because
Yeah,
I'd never seen a lawsuit, uh, a legitimate lawsuit, boxer versus management company, and in this case, the management company had grounds and they won. So I just thought it was interesting.
right. And if it was mob controlled, Custio would never have made it to court.
That's a good point.
He just would have disappeared. And that happened to 6 or 7 boxers in the 1920s and early 30s. Harry Greb was one, and Badlam Siki was one where they just didn't do what they were told. You're supposed to go down against this guy. I'm not going down. And the mob's attitude was, I'm not asking you.
Wow.
This is the way it is. And you look at a guy like LaMotta, he took a dive against Blackjack Billy Fox, still waited 3 years to get a title shot from middleweight, then still had to pay them another 75 grand in cash. These guys
Incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
they don't care. So when Billy Graham, one of the greatest, the uncrowned welterweight champion, fought Kid Gavilan for the 3rd time, he beat him, but Gavilan was a mob fighter. And before the fight, Frankie Carbo said to his manager, Cohen, he said to him, listen, your guy can win the title, but we get 75% of him from now on, and we get 75% of your take. And Graham said no. And Carbo said, that's fine, but you're not going to win. You could knock him out, but you'll just be disqualified. And Graham beat Gavilan, but didn't win. But when he retired, he said, I retired with my money and my brains intact. Gavilan, who I have nothing against, retired broke.
Wow.
He said all those guys that got in a bed with them, they're homeless, broke. Gavilan had a place to live, and Bo Jack had a place to live in Florida because Angelo Dundee and Chris Dundee paid for it. And there was actually Chris Dundee, most people don't know, under the table, who helped get rid of Carbo and Palermo. Not personally, because he had anything personal with them. He had worked for them for a long time. He had no choice, but because they were killing boxing, the money was going down. And they were getting angry and starting to threaten spectators. And Chris Dundee said, are you stupid? What are you going to have? You're going to go to a stranger's house with a gun and force them to buy boxing tickets? You don't understand. Your fights are fixed. They're so obviously fixed, fans aren't showing up. That's why TV station networks are dropping you. Sponsors are dropping out. You can't have a guy score 4 knockdowns and lose.
Right.
And then laugh about it. So now the fans just don't want to watch it. It's enough. And look what PBC did with Showtime. They put on so many terrible fights where this guy's an up-and-coming fighter and his opponent is 42, hasn't fought in 7 years, and has a 13-31 record. Sorry, that's not worth it. That's not a fight. That's a fix.
Speaking of PBC, someone called me today to say it seems to them, they were telling me, that Netflix is in the running to pick up boxing and starting off with PBC's fights.
I heard The Zone as well, but Netflix hasn't made a profit in 2 or 3 years, so why not go with him? I mean, Al Heyman's a smooth lawyer who Showtime only lost money with him, as we mentioned last week, and lost money, I think, with Fox because overpaying for the fighters.
Right.
I mean, everyone wanted Ali money. Only Ali got Ali money.
Right.
And because Ali made boxing popular for everyone, not just hardcore fans like you and me can always watch. So Ali had everyone there,
right.
Whether they were hockey fans or poker fans or reading fans, whatever. But Mayweather, like Ali, had people coming to see him to get beat, but they still paid. Not every fighter is like that. I mean, remember the Hagler fight with Leonard, where everyone in here in Toronto.
Which
I
which
gotta
one?
see that fight. I gotta see it, but it's sold out at Maple Leaf Gardens on closed circuit. But I gotta see it. So they opened up all these other venues so people could see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Toronto used to be quite a boxing mecca, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I do think it's coming back. I do think it's going to take some time. I do think it's going to take some local favorites to win some battles, if you will. Hey, speaking of battles, are you following the amateur battle between the IBA and World Boxing?
I heard about that. Yes.
So IBA, which used to be AIBA,
Mhm.
run by Umar Krumlev and company from Russia.
Great name.
Right. So they got basically displaced by World Boxing. A group of other countries, organizations got together to represent. Anyway, so the IBA is now taking World Boxing to court for naming infringement rights. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Because
I don't think they have a case.
I do think that the IBA are claiming that they have the right to those names, World Boxing, etc.
But
But
but then why wouldn't they sue World Boxing Council, World Boxing Association? My cousin Mark was a well-known copyright and patent lawyer, and
yeah,
so he spoke with the record companies when Napster came out, and
oh
he
yeah,
said you can shut Napster down, but there'll be many more like them. So
right,
you're better off just to make a deal with them or someone and get some money rather than no money, which is what Apple did. But you can't copyright a name in and of itself. You can only copyright a name according to how you use it. So if I was going to say I'm going to copyright the words Toronto Comedy Festival, I can't. I can say Lou Eisen's Toronto Comedy Festival, and
right.
then I have to specifically say how many comics on each day and what day to do it. I can't just copyright those words. So, like when I did my one man comedy show when I had a heart attack, I called it the Angina Monologues. And some woman called me from New York or from Florida, ended up speaking to my cousin Mark, and said, "Well, I
Right.
own the name." And he just said, "You can't. You can't just think that's a clever name. I'll own it. That's not how the law works. You can. He's using it specifically for a one man show about his heart attack, how he used humor to help himself recover. Unless you're doing the same thing, you have no case." And
Right.
I, I
I
how that
I was taught it's about whether you're confusing the public or not.
right. Some people do that. In Israel they had McDavid's instead of McDonald's with the same sign, and that's a copyright infringement. You're not allowed to.
Right.
And China does that all the time with Apple products and that. But we'll
Right.
see what happens. I mean, as you know, amateur boxing is much more corrupt than professional boxing. It always has been.
I don't really follow it that much. We do go to the local shows, the local gyms, and check out the local talent, um, and speak to the local trainers and managers just to see who's coming up and keep our eye on things. Um, and some of these guys and gals, you can tell, are really good and are really well trained. And so I do. That's why I keep on saying, at some certain point in the near future, you're going to see Toronto's boxing community rebound and support these athletes and go to the arenas and pay for them to watch them box. That
I
will happen.
I agree, and I've had young fighters, not now, but 8, 10 years ago, say to me, "I'm turning pro. Do you have any advice?" Yeah, go to the States.
Right.
That's your best option.
And
Uh,
I think that's what happened to Custio Clayton.
yeah, because there's 350 million people there. There's 40 million people here. You got a larger fan base. You got better sparring partners and better training and
Right.
better trainers.
Right.
But in Canada, if you're going to make it as a fighter, you got to be with Eye of the Tiger or with Yvonne Michelle. They have worldwide connections.
Right. There's a company.
Or
Is that are they they might be out of Halifax. I think they're called Three Lions.
right.
I think they've got Ryan Rozicki. I
Yeah.
mean, They might have one, but they've got a pretty good one.
Right, that's all it takes. Rosicky will be a world champion. I
Yeah,
have no doubt.
yeah, he is good. He is good, and he's got another fight coming up too.
And last week on the undercard of Fury Nagano, they had Sean Keane
Sean
fighting,
Keane. Yeah.
and I just thought, was it Sean Keane? Is that his name?
Yep. Sean Keane.
Because there was a brilliant genius comedian who passed away very young from cancer from Montreal named Sean Keane. And he was sort of like Stephen Wright. And he would say jokes like, my girlfriend died of cancer last week. Only now can I laugh at it. So, I mean, just really bizarre stuff. That's not a good example of his jokes. But anyways, Sean Keane, the fighter, showed that he was a good above average Canadian heavyweight, but not a world-class heavyweight. Parker made it look easy. And before the fight, his trainer, Andy Lee, who I quite like, they were laughing at him. And the fight starts, and Keane looked like he was going to have a bowel movement. I mean, his legs were so far apart. His balance was off. Wow. He looked terrified.
I was told, actually, I didn't realize this. I was told there were actually two separate arenas in Saudi Arabia. One for the title fight and one for the undercard.
That's right.
And both sold out, by the way.
Yes, and I think most of it was papered, but yeah, I mean, they did sell, and what I thought was funny, Graham, was the fact that, or interesting, not funny, so many of the fights ended early. And you just think, they're going to have a lot of time to cover because these guys are going in 1 or 2 rounds. Makhmudov looked incredible. Mind you, he's fighting a guy who was a light heavy or a cruiserweight, but he looks like a monster.
Yeah, so it was good news all around. I thought for Canadian boxing when I saw Sean Keane's name on that particular card. Didn't look good for him after the fight, but before the fight, run up to the fight, it was good news for Canadian boxing. And we're starting to see, not that this is now the pro Canada panel, but it is interesting, because a lot of people ask us through comments and how's it going up there in Canada? Do we have one or two, and whenever we make the joke about Lennox Lewis being a Canadian fighter, we are talking about that day when he held up the Canadian flag high after winning gold at the Olympics.
Right.
So, I mean, is he British? Yes, I guess technically he is, but we joke with our British friends about him being Canadian. So they ask us about, who's up and coming. And so we do mention fellows like Ryan Rosicky. Don't specifically mention guys like Sean Keane, but certainly guys like Custio Clayton have come up in conversations. And there are a raft of really good Canadian fighters. There's a raft of good female fighters too.
Right, and the thing is that Americans have to understand that Canadian fighters get no coverage,
right,
at all on any
form.
No radio, no TV, no newspaper. So even world title fights, you could have the greatest. You could have a card of 8 world title fights in 8 divisions. It'll never get covered in Canada under these circumstances. They just won't. And even though it outsells UFC, Lennox has Canadian citizenship. He held up the flag because he learned his boxing here. So for people, Americans, it kills me when I had this argument 10 years ago, 15 years ago, People Read Magazine. Well, we have him listed as British, but he's a Canadian citizen. And I would say, how about Vanes Smith-Royan? Well, he's American. No, but he was born in Armenia. Right, but he moved here. Right, like Lennox. And he has American citizenship. Lennox has Canadian. But Vanes is American. Right, but you're just changing the home country. In other words, if it's an American fighter, it's all right. You can do that.
Well, take a look at the Russian examples fighting out of Montreal these days.
Yeah.
You you got world champions, and where are they from? They're from Russia. No, they're not. They're from Montreal. I'm sure they have their Canadian citizenship.
They
I'm
all have
sure
citizenship. They have to if they want to make a living at it.
that's right. So I do think it not funny, but ironic
Yeah,
that
I mean, Erislandy Lara is billed as the American dream, but he was born in Cuba. But
right,
Ring
right,
magazine lists him as American.
right.
So I always say to Ring, how why does it only apply to American fighters? You know,
Right.
and I said if you go back to the 20s and 30s, all those great American fighters, a lot of them came from Europe originally.
Hmm.
So how can you claim that? Are you saying people only born in that country to
Right.
be? It's ridiculous. Canada's put 13 people in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. One of them, Eileen Eaton, was from Vancouver. She was a promoter. But in every weight division, right, you have Tommy Burns at heavyweight, as well as Lennox Lewis, Lou Briard at welterweight and middleweight, the great Jimmy McLaren, the greatest Irish fighter ever, won the world welterweight title twice, you know, and so there's a lot of great fighters from here that never that ended up in the Hall of Fame there, and Johnny Coulon, world bantamweight champion. So these guys never got their due.
Out of curiosity, how many Hall of Fames are there for boxing?
There's quite a few,
It's quite a
all over
few.
the United States, but there isn't one Canadian one.
Hey Tim, how you doing?
Hey, I'm Russian, babysitting everything. I got to tell you about this other, of these things that I'm doing right after this one. It's causing a little bit of tightness. So
That's
I'm
okay.
coming on, but I'm gonna talk to you. I'm gonna talk to you.
Were you in
I
Saudi
burned my
Arabia last
hand.
week?
Wow.
I
Wow.
burned my, I
Were
was
you
supposed
in?
to go to Saudi Arabia. I burned my hand here and right here
Okay.
cooking here. So I might make a phone call because I've been busy and with the grandkids and with like trying to train. I had to take off because I was in so much pain. And I'm just getting finished to cooking me some egg whites with cheese and everything. So yeah, and so I got to do something directly after this, and I'm gonna talk to you about that. Okay?
I,
No,
I, I,
Will
I hope
will
you
you?
I hope you swore quite loudly when you burned yourself. Because for me, that's the only thing that works.
Boy, it was the worst pain. Look at that. Look at
I
that.
know.
yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was the worst. I couldn't do nothing.
Did
Couldn't
you
do
pour
nothing.
did you pour water into a frying pan or something like what?
No, no. All I did was I was frying my daughter some chicken, and so she called me, and I was talking to her. So when I turned this way to get some, I went this way and slapped the pan, and it slapped up on, it
Oh,
hit my arm, and I really didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia, and that helped me in a way make a decision. My mom was a certain way. My mom was 88. She said, "Timmy, don't go," because she watched CNN, and all this other stuff, and I kept felt that kind of like not going. But there's a lot of other stars didn't go. Tommy Hearns didn't go. There's a whole bunch of other guys didn't go.
Right.
I could use the money though. It was like 15,000.
wow.
I could have used the money, but I was just really, I just didn't want my mom to get any sicker or
Mm,
so. So what they doing now, guys? I didn't mean to interrupt the show.
No,
no, go
I
ahead.
was
Is that
going to say to you, Tim,
okay? What they doing now? They trying to get me to train Tyson Fury. They putting out, um,
that'd be
yeah.
great.
Oh man, it's so easy to beat Youssef. All you got to do, all you got to do is he's moving, he's quick. Hit this, hit the body, break his arm. Don't worry about the head. He's moving so you don't hit him here. Yusef is moving, but this can't get out the way. I don't want to give
Right.
my secrets away. I don't want to give my
Well,
secrets away.
I got to tell you, when Frazier fought Ali the third time, Eddie Futch, when I spoke to him years later, he said to Frazier, concede the head. Forget it. Go after his body. Destroy his body. That'll take his legs away. Then
Hmm,
the head will be right there for you.
wow.
And,
Yep.
and that's what,
Yusef is a much better mover than Joe Frazier.
yeah, Usyk's a much better, I think he's a better fighter than Fury, a better technical fighter. But I was just going to say to you, a couple weeks ago, when I burned my hand,
Hmm.
and I I started cursing 12-letter words. And my wife said, "You can't curse like that." I said, "There's a rule book for life that says burn yourself, you can use 12-letter curse words. Okay? That's the law all over the world. You burn yourself, you say mother, you know what. And if people don't like it, then they can go in another room."
I just usually say shit. Oh shit.
I broke my baby toe once on the frame of my bed, and I cursed for about an hour, hopping around on one foot.
Wow, you must be as angry as somebody else besides that injury.
Yeah, people will call up, "Hello, F you." Yeah, it hurts.
So in all seriousness, you're gonna be training with Fury?
No, they just put words out. Like a lot of the gypsies, you know what? He's like gypsy too.
Yep.
I used to hang with the gypsies over there because it made me feel like back home where I grew up. They were like down to earth. They didn't, no, and the English people were beautiful too. But when I went around Tyson Fury and a lot of the gypsies in England, I felt like I was at home because the girls were tough. The girls didn't take no crap. Everybody had to play the same role. There's one guy that says if something happened, he handles everything. They don't call the police.
Right.
And I kind of like respected that. It was like a tribe when I went over there, and I was like, wow, this is something new. This is not new, but it's something new in me. And I was like, wow, you got the king, you got the queen, you got this, and the gypsy organization. So I respected them. And the girls will not back up. What?
Fury used to be trained in Toronto by a guy named Chris Johnson, who was a light fighter.
Who?
Tyson Fury was trained by Chris Johnson in Toronto.
Chris Johnson.
Right. He lost to Antonio Tarver. He was a Canadian Olympic medalist, and he's still probably the top trainer in Canada. Actually, he is the top trainer in Canada. And a great guy.
Let me say this. Okay, finish and I'm gonna tell real quick.
I mean, he's a very good fighter, and a great trainer. And Tyson has had different people. Now he has Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill was giving him advice. Tyson just wasn't listening. He had
no. Sugar Hill never fought a day in his life. He really don't know what he's doing. I hate to say this about him. Sugar Hill never fought, and all he says is spiritual things. He never give direction. Throw the left hook here. Throw the right hand this way.
He did last week, and I mean, he was trained by Emmanuel Stewart.
Emmanuel Stewart, right, gave so much respect to my trainer. I was confused. I have so much respect for Emmanuel. I love him. And when they got together, I was standing there. I was a young guy, sparring partner. And I was watching Emmanuel Stewart giving my trainer all this respect and everything. And I was like, Tommy Hearns was an explosive offense, had no defense. Emmanuel Stewart, I love him. I love him to death. But I'm just telling you, Tommy Hearns made his name big, just like Freddie Roach's name was made big by Manny Pacquiao.
Right, but Emmanuel Stewart, who used to work with George Chuvalo in the 60s, used to help him. Didn't work with him because he was only 15, 16. But I was at a lunch at the Hall of Fame with him and Angelo Dundee and a bunch of other guys, Gil Clancy.
I was with Dundee. Ali told me Angelo don't know how to train. I just have him there with me. I swear to God. I love Angelo. He's from South Philly, where I was born and raised. You know what, the Italian market. Wait a minute.
You weren't
there. Italian market. Hold on. Angelo Dundee was born 15 minutes from me. We used to go to the same area, everything. And Ali said he know Angelo don't know how to. I love Angelo. That's my friend.
That's not what Muhammad said to me. He said he owed everything to Angelo. And you were there for a short time before the Foreman fight. You weren't there in the 1960s. You didn't see him when he was.
I could tell Angelo don't know skills or nothing, but he know how to direct.
Nah.
He never fought. He never fought. His brother did.
So what? He had 40 world champions. Ray Arcel was in the Hall of Fame. He never fought. He's considered one of the greatest of all time.
Because the fighters made him great. I hate to talk bad about him.
But that's like saying
when the fighters win, the trainers and everybody else win.
Yeah, but
I
that
don't
was
care if they can't fight her. I can't.
Angelo's fighters won all the time. So it's like saying this is like they say in baseball. They say about remember Bob Gibson of the Cardinals, right? Greatest right-handed pitcher ever. People said, "Well, you're only great because your team scores more runs when you play." Right, because no one can get a hit off them. You can't.
That's not boxing. That's not boxing.
Right, but it's the same point. Being a boxer, a lot of the great trainers, not necessarily were fighters. Some were, some weren't. But Angelo is considered an all-time great trainer. You can't dispute that. You may dispute it.
Okay, if you was in Floyd Mayweather corner and nobody never seen you teach, they would think you the greatest of all times.
No, not necessarily.
I know boxing. I'm not trying to fight you or argue, but I know what I'm talking about. And this is what's been happening.
But you were at Muhammad's camp for a short time period.
No.
And fight.
I was with Ali. I was with Ali several times.
Right. Okay.
He don't listen. He didn't listen to Angelo. He didn't listen to him.
Later, but that's not the point. Angelo.
It is the point.
He didn't listen to Angelo. Angelo said to me, and Muhammad said to me, but more Angelo. Angelo said, Muhammad Ali, each fighter is different. We can agree on that. And that's a different personality. And he said, some fighters you can tell what to do, others you can't. He said, you couldn't tell Muhammad Ali anything. You couldn't say stop and take a drink of water or stop, let me tell you off. He said the way to work with Muhammad was to compliment him on what he was doing, and then he would do it. I know a lot of writers, Tim Dahlberg, who was there with Angelo. He was from Sports Illustrated. He wrote a great book on boxing in Vegas. And he said, if you ask me, I would say they were never friends because they argued all the time. Right, but it worked. And Muhammad gave Angelo credit. And Muhammad's the only one that counts. Same as at Angelo's funeral, the only fighter that showed up was Muhammad. And people were disappointed. And I said, but Muhammad's the only one that counts. So when you talk about Sugar Hill, I thought the advice he gave him was good. But Fury...
I didn't.
Fury
he didn't even say nothing. He really didn't say nothing that was really made a point to Fury, because Fury kept on fighting the same way he usually fight.
But that's not Hill's fault. He said, use your jab. Circle away from his left hand, use your jab, and come over top with the right. Double jab, right hand. And Fury wouldn't do it. He just kept throwing straight right hands and tried to knock him out with each shot.
Those instructions are an a lesson, what you just said. Double jab, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I know. I know that. That's not the point. I'm just telling you what he said. I asked Buddy McGirt.
Well, why did he fight? Why did he get rid of him this time?
I don't know if he got rid of Sugar Hill. No one told me.
You know that he could teach Sugar Hill. Tyson Fury could teach Sugar Hill how to fight.
Did Tyson Fury fire Sugar Hill this week? I haven't heard that.
I heard that he's not going to be with him. But Tyson Fury could teach Sugar Hill.
Right, but you know what? I asked Buddy McGirt one time about a fighter he had, and I said, you gave him great instructions. And he said, but so what? He wasn't focused. He wasn't listening to me. He said, a guy's only going to pick up so much in between rounds.
That's his fault. The fighter don't have confidence in him.
No, he just said the guy didn't listen. I told him what to do. And everyone agreed it was the right advice. The fighter thought, no, I'll knock him out. Same with
me and you on the same team. Remember this. I'm just trying to exchange knowledge and stuff. I
understand, but
I'm just so happy that I had one of not the best, but one of the greatest trainers back in the day, Slim Robinson, and I'm really grateful that I walked into his room in his gym, the old Pastor gym, right where Rocky made the movie.
And he trained.
And I'm glad I walked into him. I walked into the bad guy. I was getting hit a lot, and then I switched to the other guy.
Slim Jim.
Everything changed. Slim Jim. Everything changed.
He trained Mike Rossman to the world
title.
title.
Jewish Bomber. He won the heavyweight champ. He won the light heavyweight championship against
Melendez.
Victor Melendez.
Victor
Go
Galindez.
ahead, rap on.
And Slim Jim Robinson, who was one of the all-time great trainers, as you know, ever. And he was right. After Rossman's career, he said his father ruined him, and his father did ruin him.
I was there, and his father didn't really know that much, and his father had a lot of input. Slim showed him how to throw them left hooks. Slim taught him how to do a whole lot of things. Slim taught Eddie Mustafa Muhammad how to throw his left hook better. And that's how we went. I know because every time they hired Slim, they took me as a sparring partner. That's about Eddie Mustafa, several other guys. Right. And I saw Slim teaching them stuff and he made Eddie the champion that Eddie's supposed to be. I was in the corner with Eddie too. Go ahead, champ. Go ahead.
He made Mike Rossman a world champion.
Eddie Mustafa.
Yes. And DiPiano, Rossman's father, not only ruined him, he stole all his money.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
His own father stole his money.
I heard about that.
Michael Carvajal's brother stole all his money.
You serious?
Yeah. And Carvajal would show up at the Hall of Fame, Tim, and he'd be drunk and rude. And it wasn't until years later we found out he was broke. His own brother, Carvajal's brother, only took Michael's 6 or 7 million. Michael was a flyweight. So to earn that much as a flyweight was ridiculous.
6 or 7 million?
Not only stole it, he evicted their mother from the house Michael had bought for her.
Wow.
And his brother ended up in prison because his brother just flat out robbed him. And you would think Mike Rossman would be able to trust his own father, right? You'd be able to trust your own family. But he couldn't.
I was right there. I was in the old Patron gym with them, training. My trainer was old man Booker. I watched Mike Rossman every day. Slim had him sharp. Slim had him slipping, throwing left hook. And he was whipping everybody behind him. And I was like, but I was with this old guy. I didn't know. I was young and just coming in the gym. You don't know who's a good trainer. That's why a lot of boxers need to know before they go in those gyms who can get you there, who cannot. And a lot of boxers today will go in the gym and pick this guy and that guy, but they need guys like me to say, look, I think that guy is better for you. Go to that guy. You know what I'm saying? So when I went in that gym, I picked this old man. Man, I was getting hit. I was like, what the hell is boxing? And then I was seeing Mike Rossman, a white Jewish kid, whipping everybody. I don't care what nationality he was whipping them. And I was like, oh, okay. I switched over. I'll tell you another story how I switched over because somebody sent a message to my trainer, old man Booker, that Larry Holmes wanted me to hire me because he heard about me as a sparring partner. He wanted me to be a sparring partner, and Booker never told me. And so when I found out, I left them. I said, I could have made about $3,000-4,000 going to go spar. Then I left Booker, and that's when I knew that he wasn't the right trainer for me or for anybody else. Nice old man, too.
One of the bad things in boxing, this happens everywhere. There was a fighter in Canada, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, named Art Hafey, the toy tiger.
What's his name?
Art Hafey.
Okay.
And Art was rated above the world champion in the featherweight division. He knocked out Ruben Oliveras.
Say that again.
He knocked out Rockabye Ruben Oliveras.
Okay.
So Art was rated by Ring above the champion. He could never get a world title fight. His manager, Suey Welsh, was in his late 80s. And
you know a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and his manager died, so his trainer took over. Art told me in the last 5-10 years, he's in his 70s now, late 60s, early 70s. He was in a gym in Halifax just working out to keep in shape. And he saw a 21, 22-year-old kid training all these kids how to fight. And he walked over and he said, it's not my place. I know it's your class, but I beg you not to do this because you're going to get these kids hurt. You don't know what you're doing.
I've seen a lot of situations like that. Go ahead.
And he just said, I was trained by Burke Emery. Burke Emery was trained by Charlie Goldman, who trained Marciano. And Burke knew what he was doing. And son, you're a nice young guy, but don't tell these kids they could be pros. This is just a gym where you're teaching young kids. It takes tremendous talent. You have to be special to be a pro, and it takes great trainers. And you're just 21. I'm not saying you won't be a great trainer, but it's not possible at your age. Leave these kids alone. Don't get them hurt.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
And he said, I'm not trying to take money out of your pocket or interfere, but I was a world ranked fighter. I don't want to see other people get hurt, especially kids.
I like that. I like that. Being honest.
Yeah,
So-
I mean,
Being honest. A lot of trainers won't tell you. They just want to get money.
right.
You
And
know
there's
what I'm saying?
always trainers in history, from Slim Jim Robinson to Manuel Stewart, Angelo Dundee, all of them who turned away a lot of guys who said, I'm sorry.
Well, wait a minute. Let me say this. How many amateur fights or how many professional fights did Emmanuel Stewart had?
He had quite a few amateur fights.
No, I didn't know. I didn't think he had that many.
He did. He was an
How
amateur
many?
fighter. He won trophies and stuff. I have pictures of him with that. He was a good amateur fighter. But he was a lighter weight fighter, and he was told, you're not going to make that much money.
But, well, evidently, and I love this guy to death. I hate to talk about him. Tommy Hearn's defense was zero.
Right, you're right. But you know
It was
what?
zero.
I got to tell you something about that. This is what I wanted to tell you originally. So I'm at the Hall of Fame, and I'm smart enough to be quiet to watch Gil Clancy and Emmanuel and Angelo and all these guys talk. And Angelo said to Emmanuel, boy, if Tommy Hearns had balance, he never would have lost a fight. And
If he had defense.
and defense, right? Balance helps the defense, obviously. And Emmanuel went like this. He said, Angelo, I've known him since he was 12. Every day, I would train him till I cried to try to teach him balance and defense. Every single day. And then he started knocking people out, and he didn't care. And I still every day say that to him. And some guys just, like you said, Tommy Hearns was power personified, but he had no defense and he had no balance, So when he got hit on the chin, he took the full brunt in his chin, and that's why Iran Barkley knocked him out twice.
Well, the good trainers will teach you both defense and offense. You can't leave
Emmanuel-
it out. You can't leave it out.
It just didn't work.
No, I'm gonna tell you, it will work if you are a good teacher and you know defense and offense and countering. You would do that. You would not. You would add that in. You wouldn't leave that out. You wouldn't leave defense slipping and countering out. That's important. You know what I'm saying? Offense is easy. Offense is easy. Throwing punches. Defense is more complicated where you got to block punches and counter. So
right, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you.
You've never seen Tommy really countering a whole lot. He just all offense, knock you right out, boom, 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 boom.
Right, and if you look at Marvin Hagler, his trainers, the Petronelli brothers, really only had him and maybe Robbie Sims. They never produced another good fighter. They weren't really good trainers, but Hagler was their one shining star.
Okay.
But the advice they gave him in between rounds was terrible. Especially against a guy like Ray Leonard. These guys didn't know what they were doing, but they ran a boxing gym and they produced Marvin Hagler. So you could look at trainers all throughout history. Charlie Goldman trained a lot of great guys. He trained Terry McGovern, who beat George Dixon and Joe Gans, but he also trained Marciano.
Okay. We got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Tyson Fury and Ngannou. Then I gotta go. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Okay, let's talk about it real quick. Tyson Fury, to me, who I know, and I'm friends with the family. I don't think he trained really hard.
Not at all.
I think he believed that he could just play around with Ngannou. And Ngannou, how does you pronounce his name? Ngannou. Okay, he kept his hands up, but if multiple punches would have come, he didn't know how to do this and block. Right. He just had to do that. There's more to it than that. Now, Tyson Fury, I think, won the fight.
I agree.
Won the fight, but he didn't win it convincingly. And Ngannou you gotta actually overdo it to get the title. When I fought Larry Holmes, I did everything I possibly can. I only had like 14, 13 fights to win the fight. You just can't do this. You got to go past that to win the title. So Tyson Fury won that fight. His opponent did just enough. He didn't do enough to really say, hey, that's my title. You got to do more than what he did. And that's what the judges. You got to do more than that. You know, you really got to put Tyson Fury on his ass better. That punch was a flash. It hit his shoulder, then it hit his head, and Tyson went down. Tyson went down with Steve Cunningham. He went down with okay, hold on. Okay, he went down with a couple of the guys. You gotta get ready. You gotta get ready to go.
Yeah.
Tim, he's been down quite a bit, Tyson Fury.
It's his defense.
Right.
So I put out the thing. I put out something. Look, man, I can help you. I can help you and everything. Just give me a chance, and I'll show you. You need some defense. So down in this time in the game, Tyson Fury shouldn't be, trying to change everything because he's really on getting ready to retire in maybe 3 or 4 fights. So you got to just teach him this basic stuff. He just got to learn defense here instead of jumping back all the time. Every time you approach him, he jump back. Every time you punch him, he jump back. Okay, he got to do this. He got to do this, catch and throw. Boom, boom, defense. Would you do that right now? I don't know. But if he want to do it, just show him. That's what he need to do instead of jumping back. Every time somebody come at him, he jump back. Right. Go ahead, and then I gotta go, okay? And I'm gonna talk.
This is what years ago when Lennox Lewis knocked out Michael Grant, and Grant was 6'7". Lennox is 6'7".
Grant didn't really know that much. Go ahead.
Right, and that's right. And Lennox couldn't believe people were picking him to win. So Lennox said he noticed early in the first round he threw a jab, and Grant ducked under it. And Lennox thought, you shouldn't be ducking under. You're taller than me, so you should be slipping the jab. And so next time Lennox just faked the jab and threw an uppercut and dropped him, and Grant never recovered. So I think Fury, like you're saying, doesn't really have much defense. He figures his height, and I've done an article for this on Substack. I was telling Graham, all through history, tall fighters think that moving back straight is how they can avoid getting hurt, and it never works.
I know. I've been around a good trainers, and moving back is not the best thing to do because you get hit with the second punch when you move back. There's a first punch that make you go in the direction, and then if you go more, the second punch will hurt you, whether it's the level or the right hand. So this is what they taught me. When they throw the first punches, just put your hands up and catch them so you can fire right there. But if you catch that first one, this is the worst thing you should do is go back.
Right, and if you look at through history, Jess Willard, 6'7", moved straight back. Bad thing to do against Dempsey. And Primo Carnera, whose fights were fixed.
I don't think that if you look at the video, they were tough guys. I don't think they had the skills that they had in this middle age.
You're right.
Not now. I don't think they had the skills. Sugar Ray and a couple other guys did, but
yeah, you're right. I mean, Dempsey did. Dempsey was hard to
catch. They walk through like this.
Yeah, Dempsey was.
Can't do that nowadays.
You're right, but look at a guy like Roberto Duran. Duran was as great on the inside as he was offensively. He was great defensively too. Duran was hard to hit.
I'm sorry, man. I was running around all day, had the kids. That's why I'm eating the food. I'm sorry.
No problem. But yeah, the skills back then, except for a guy like Dempsey, who was good defensively, but didn't really have to be. But you look at a lot of these taller guys going through boxing history, they think that because they're overwhelmingly tall, 6'7", 6'8", they can fight. They can't fight. They're almost just circus freaks. I'm gonna get
ready to go, guys. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We have to go.
I'm gonna talk to you. Everything is good. I think we had a good show. I'm gonna talk to you. Tomorrow or something. I'll talk to you. Okay.
Please do.
And I gotta have the conversation with you because I had to do other stuff too. Okay.
No problem.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. I love you. You have to love yourself before you love anything else. And let's keep this stuff moving. There's some beautiful stuff on this channel. And I'm happy to be a part of it, okay?
Thanks very much, Tim. We appreciate your help.
Yeah. Okay, I'm out of here. Thank you very much.
Be well.
Thank you.
All right. See you later. Talk to you.
All right, Lou. We're going to end the show unless you got some last words.
A woman is a woman, but a good cigar is a smoke. That's the Marx Brothers. Actually, Duck Soup is starting right now. Groucho's favorite picture. I was just going to say that Tim always likes to slag Angelo, but
He does.
throughout history, there's never been. You don't have to be a great fighter, although Charlie Goldman was, to be a great trainer. I mean, Ray Arcel was a great trainer. Dan Florio trained Jersey Joe Walcott. So a lot of these guys back then, Bill Miller trained Johnny Saxton and James Toney, and he wasn't a fighter. He was just brilliant. So,
It would be nice to know that there are actual certifications for training, especially at a local level.
well,
Um,
I, you know what? There were a couple trainers in Toronto that there was a fighter. I tried to get him connected in the States, and he had a good trainer, but his wife started training him. And she said, I have a government certificate from the federal government certifying me as a boxing trainer. And the manager in the States said, okay, well, goodbye. And basically they said, this guy, Cameron Duncan, said, we have Roberto Garcia, who was a world champion and has trained world champions. Right, but I have a certificate. How many world champions you train?
right.
I haven't trained any. Any amateur champions? No, I just trained homeless kids off to, okay, goodbye.
All right.
Training comes from experience, being in the game. Certificate from the government doesn't mean anything.
No, I was just meaning because what you guys had said earlier, guys going into a gym and that's the only trainer they have at their disposal, if you will.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to know that if there was some level of competency, if you can put it that way, to delineate the good from the bad trainers, quite frankly, from those from those just wanting money and balancing off those who are loving the sport and doing it for the sport. But to improve the sport, obviously, from what I heard between the discussion between you and Tim, was basically it's luck of the draw.
Yeah, quite a bit.
If you from what I could tell, there's roughly speaking 5 trainers out there of name value that should be training today, and above and beyond that,
Yeah, I mean, when Kid Gavilan first came to New York from Cuba, the mob dumped his trainer, but they hired Ray Arcel and Freddie Brown instead, and they ended up training Duran too. So yeah, I mean, that was an improvement over the trainer he had, but that's very rare.
All right, Lou, let's wrap this up. We'll see you next week.
Yes.
Let me hit the promo button and we're away.
Okay.